Hello there, duelists. Welcome to another deck profile. I had a bit of a breather last week. Give myself time to have a break. You know, you don't want to make anything that could be rubbish, you know, kind of down the line. So the pendulum mechanic, the runt of the master rule litter and constant Konami problem child. I've really not got many pendulum based decks, as it seems like the strategies kind of tend to bleed together. But today I've got Pendulum Magicians on the playmat. And with the release of Double Iris Magician, what better time to look at everyone's favourite worst mechanic? Alright, so first up is the monsters that are also spells. So we're going to go with 3 Harmonizing Magician first, and this is kind of, in my opinion, kind of the cornerstone of the deck. So when this guy's pendulum summoned, just quickly, I'm not going to read out absolutely every single line of text on these cards or even abbreviate them just because it would take me forever, you know. The Pendulum Magician cards have notoriously, well, just Pendulum cards have notoriously got a lot of text on them. So I'm going to read out the relevant bits. So when this guy's pendulum summoned, you can special summon a Pendulum Magician monster from your deck, and then that card is banished when it leaves the field. Importantly, you cannot special summon this guy from the extra deck, or this girl should I say, and anything that you use apart from linking to go to the extra deck, so Fuse or XYZ or Synchro, all of the materials must be a Pendulum Magician monster in order to do that. It is a tuner, so again, you know, you've got a variety of options with this card, and again, I think this really is what is making this deck run at the moment. From there, running 3 Wisdom Eye Magician. I had this guy out for a while. I was running it kind of like a dragon variant of the deck, but I really feel like, you know, with Double Iris back and stuff like that, it feels much more like it's got its own personality. So Wisdom Eye Magician, if you've got a Magician card in the other Pendulum Zone, you can pop Wisdom Eye Magician and then put a different Pendulum Magician in your Pendulum Zone. So it's good for kind of stocking up on your extra deck and getting the cards that you need, you know, almost like a Lone Fire Blossom for Pendulum monsters. Or for Pendulum Magician, should I say. And from there, running 2 Purple Poison Magician. So this is one of the ones where both the Pendulum effect and the kind of monster effect are relevant. So basically, if a Dark Spellcaster type monster battles, you can increase that monster's attack by 1,200 and pop Purple Poison Magician from the Pendulum Zone. At that point, its monster effect will activate because it's been popped. So if it's destroyed by battle or card effect, you can pop a card on the field. So Purple Poison works really well, you know, with like our Pendulumgraph stuff, and just generally is good for disrupting. From there, we've got 2 Black Fang Magician. So Black Fang Magician works in a very similar way to Purple Poison Magician. So you can target a monster your opponent controls and halve its attack, and then pop that card. And then if it's popped, you can special summon from the graveyard a Dark Spellcaster type monster. And then newly released, we're running the 1 Double Iris Magician. Again, he works in a very similar way. So you can target a Dark Spellcaster type monster, and then this turn the battle damage that monster inflicts is doubled, which is obviously pretty rubbish in comparison to the other 2. However, when he's destroyed by battle or card effect, you can add a Pendulumgraph from your deck to your hand, which is really useful. From there, I've got a couple of other one-offs. So I've got 1 OafDragon Magician and 1 Xiangke Magician, which I'm going to butcher that name, so I'm just going to breeze on past it. So OafDragon Magician, both of his effects are fairly relevant. I normally prefer to have him sitting in the Pendulum Zone. It's kind of like, you know, you kind of sit in the Pendulum Zone, you leave him there. So if you've got a Pendulum Magician in your other Pendulum Zone, you can add a Pendulum Magician from your extra deck to your hand. And then if you're summoned, you can target a Pendulum Magician in your graveyard and add that to your hand. He also works with Performing Powers, but obviously we're not playing any of those. And then Xiangke Magician, his Pendulum effect is basically never comes up, and then he can also target and negate a light monster's effects until the end of the turn, which again might come up, but it doesn't. It's rare. So then we've got some of the support engines. So first up is Chronograph Sorcerer. So again, this was kind of like, it's been there forever. And then obviously the 1 Timegazer Magician that goes along with that. So Chronograph Sorcerer can pop it from the Pendulum Zone to special summon a Timegazer Magician. And then if it's in your hand and something's destroyed on your field, you can special summon Chronograph Sorcerer and another monster from your hand. And he's also got a special summon Zark effect, which again never comes up. Timegazer Magician, I don't really know what its effects are, but they barely ever get used. From there, we're running 3 Supreme King Dragon Darkwurm, and I think that I really struggle to think of a Pendulum deck that wouldn't use this card. It's just so good, and then obviously the 1 Supreme King Gate 0 to go along with it. So when Darkwurm's in the graveyard, you can special summon it back from the graveyard if you control no monsters, and then add a gate from your deck to your hand. The gate's effects aren't that relevant, but it's a level 7, similar to Xiangke, which comes up in, for our board making plays. Supreme King Darkwurm can also, if it's in the Pendulum Zone, can activate the Gate 0 from the deck, which again is much more relevant. You'll see him in the graveyard. And then finally, I'm running a tiny spell counter little engine, which is the 1 Servant of Endymion and the 1 Mythical Beast Jackal King. And this is just just put more bodies on board, and I think Jackal King's just a really solid kind of like addition to to your end board. So Servant, you can activate it. So once in the Pendulum Zone, I'm not going to read out its monster effect because it's really not that relevant, but you place 1 spell counter on it for each spell that's activated, and then you can remove 3 to special summon it from the Pendulum Zone, and then special summon a spellcast type monster that can have pendulum counters put on it with 1,000 or more attack from your deck, which ends up being Mythical Beast Jackal King, and Jackal King gets 2 counters every time a spell card is activated, and can remove 2 to negate and destroy a monster effect, which is really, really solid. Because if you can get this off first, then you can stop your opponent's kind of hand traps and Nibiru and all that sort of stuff. I just really think it's a solid little ad. Okay, so onto the spells and traps. I've grouped them together because there's only 1 trap. So first up, we've kind of got our searches, which there's quite a lot of them if I'm being honest. So we've got 3 Pendulum Call. So discard a card, add 2 Magician Pendulum monsters with different names from your deck to your hand. And then Pendulum Magicians that are in your Pendulum Zones can't be destroyed. You've also got to activate it before you activate any Pendulum Magician cards. So you can't Wisdom Eye Magician. Oh no, actually, yeah, no, you can't Wisdom Eye Magician and then use Pendulum Call because you're using Pendulum Magician's effect before you use Pendulum Call, which is a little bit sad, but I think it does make it fairly balanced. And then we've got 3 Duelist Alliance, which you can search. If there's a card in your Pendulum Zone, you can search out a Pendulum spell or trap or Pendulum monster, and that's with Pendulum in the name. So that can search out Pendulum Call or some of your graphs and stuff like that. So again, it's just a solid addition. You only activate both of these once per turn, so you've got to be a little bit careful, but I still think the consistency boost is well worth it. We're then playing 3 Spell Power Mastery for the Endymion. So this searches an Endymion card. We're obviously only playing 1 of those, and then you can add counters to cards you control based on the number of Spell Power Masteries in your graveyard and stuff like that. But again, that doesn't really come up because we're only running that one card. And then it's a consistency card. It's also kind of one of the cards that you end up searching is Star Pendulumgraph. So your opponent can't target your spellcast type monsters with spells, which I think everybody forgets. There'll be a number of times where I just forget that someone's done some stuff with spell cards while this is on the field, but try and remember it. And then if a Pendulum Magician leaves the monster zone or it leaves the Pendulum Zone, you can add a Pendulum Magician from your deck to your hand. And then we've got a couple of draw cards, so I'm running 2 Pot of Desires. Yes, the math says that I really should be running 3, but you know what? I got a feel, and I feel like two's the way. And then 1 Upstart Goblin. So these are kind of easily, again, you really want to be doing your searching before you use Pot of Desires because you don't want to lose the specifics like, Chronograph Sorcerer. If you banish Timegazer, it can't be activated, or the same with the Endymion card. So yeah, try to use the Pot of Desires afterwards. And then we've got 2 dumping cards for the Darkwurm. We've got Dragon Shrine and Foolish Burial. And again, this could be 2 Dragon Shrines, but I don't really know why you would use 2 Dragon Shrines because it's only once per turn, so you could dump 2 if you were desperate for it. And then finally, we've got the Time Pendulumgraph. So again, this is kind of newly added back in, but you can't target spellcasters with trap cards, so the equivalent for Star Pendulumgraph, and then once per turn you can pop a Pendulum Magician, either from a face-up Pendulum Magician from your side of the field or from the Pendulum Zone, and then pop 1 card your opponent controls. And then if you didn't pop 2 cards, you get to send 1 card on the field to the graveyard, and that bit doesn't target, so that's really good. because it means that with Pendulum Call, you can do all sorts of shenanigans. And then on to the extra deck. So we've got a huge variety, which I really like. So we've got the one fusion card, which is the Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon, which we are actually not summoning via the fusion mechanism. As you may well have noticed, we're not running Polymerization. But if it's special summoned, you can target one face-up attack position monster your opponent controls and then bounce it back to the hand, which is obviously really solid. And then you can negate anything, basically, by shuffling a face-up pendulum monster from your extra deck into the deck and then destroy it. So super solid disruption. You're almost always putting this on your end board. From there I've got a few synchros. So I've got one FA Dawn Dragster, one Ignister Prominence, one Supreme King Dragon Clearwing. So Dawn Dragster, gains tokens and reduces its level in order to negate spells and traps. And then Ignister Prominence, you can pop a pendulum monster on your side of the field or in the pendulum zone and then shuffle one card from the field into the deck. And again, that's non-targeting, which is a good way of getting around problems. Supreme King Dragon Clearwing is destroy all face-up monsters your opponent controls, which is really solid as well. And then finally, we're running the one Borreload Savage Dragon as kind of like a negator for your end board. And then we're running a couple of XYZs. So I'm running Evilswarm Nightmare and Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon. So Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon is kind of like an attack negator. It's almost like a Utopia-esque effect, but when it's sent to the graveyard, you can special summon an Odd Eyes dragon from your extra deck, which is how you get into the Vortex Dragon. So you go to Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon with your 2 level 7s, and then you link that off or whatever it is, and then you get to your Vortex Dragon. That sets you up for a game. Evilswarm Nightmare I highly rate. I've had it in a few of my deck profiles, but when your opponent special summons a monster, you can detach one to Book of Moon. And again, that's not relevant for links, but it's before they get to those links. And then the rest of the extra deck comprises of a bunch of link monsters. So we've got one Crystron Halqifibrax, which I think is a solid replacement, to the Electromite. I know we've got the new Metal Foes card, but I'm actually not so sure that that's going to change the game that much. But yeah, Halqifibrax summons out, your tuners, which tends to be Harmonizing Magician. And then we've got one IP Masquerena to try and build our disruptions in our end board. We've got one Knightmare Phoenix, which again you could probably choose to be whatever you wanted. I think there's definitely a few spots in this extra deck where you could, where you can tweak it. We've then got one Knightmare Unicorn to go along with that and to go along with the IP Masquerena. And then we've got Selene, Queen of the Master Magician. So she's 2+ monsters, including a spellcast type monster, and she gains spell counters based on the number of spells on your field or in your graveyard. So normally, you've got your 2 on the field in the pendulum zones and then a couple in the graveyard, so she gets a number. And then she can remove 3 from anywhere on the field to special summon back a magician from your graveyard, which is really, really solid. And then we've got a couple of link 4s. Again, you could choose to mix it up however you wanted. I've kind of got Unchained Abomination to go to using Selene or whatever it is. And again, this is just pops in the end phase. It pops if something's destroyed by battle, it pops if something's destroyed by card effects. It's really solid. Again, I think if you wanted to up the power outage and increase the deck's cost by $70, you could easily swap this out for an access code talker. Mine's sitting in some other deck. So from there I've got Saryuja Skuldread and one Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess. So Saryuja, again, I would say it's definitely up to your own personal opinion. I had Borreload Dragon, the original, for attack pinching, or even Borrel Sword you could put in for for your kind of OTKs. And then Appaloosa is just great. It's just an all-round solid card to put on your end boards. So pendulums have definitely had some success in the past, and they are still very strong today. The modern board ending tools, that every deck has been, or every kind of relevant deck have been using, are easily incorporated into into the Pendulum Magician strategy, and you can quite easily add the text that you want, for a Buster Lock or whatever it is, could easily be incorporated here. Absolutely no problem. So for relevance, I'm going to give them a 4. They can go first or second and have the ability to produce quite a lot of disruptions or crack opponents' boards. And you're never really going to have the same duel twice. There's a lot of variety here, which, you know, rings strong for me. So although Pendulum focus, they have, you know, all the different summoning mechanics and, you know, the different searches that are going on, the different tech options that are in there. So it's going to be a 4 as well for fun factor. I think what really rounds it off for me is that the deck is actually reasonably budget. I've estimated this at about $150, although obviously you could bump it up. Again, the extra deck is somewhere where you could easily add some more, you know, to give it a heightened power ceiling. So there really is no reason not to give these guys a go, besides when your opponent flips anti-spell fragrance. Thanks for watching.